Welcome to Execution File, a channel where real execution stories are told in a clear, simple way. Please support us by subscribing, commenting, sharing, liking, and tell us where you're watching from. On a cold January morning in 1989, a crowd stood outside Florida State Prison in Stark, Florida. Some people held signs. Some cheered. Some wore shirts with angry messages. They were not there for a concert or a parade. They were waiting for one man to die. Inside the prison walls, a thin, calm man waited on death row. His name was Ted Bundy. To many people, he did not look like a monster. He had a neat face, a gentle smile, and the look of an ordinary man who might work in an office or study at a university. For years, that normal appearance had been his mask. Ted Bundy had once been a student of psychology. He had gone to University of Washington and later attended law school. He had volunteered in politics and even answered calls at a crisis hotline, helping strangers who felt sad or hopeless. People who worked with him described him as polite, intelligent, and charming. Some trusted him. Some admired him. None of them knew the full truth. Behind this polite mask was a secret life filled with terrible violence. In the 1970s, young women began to disappear in different parts of the United States. They were often college students, bright and hopeful, with long dark hair and promising futures. Many of them were last seen in places that should have been safe: a campus, a library, a parking lot, or a quiet street. Later, Ted Bundy confessed to killing at least 30 young women across states like Washington, Utah, Colorado, and Florida. Experts believe there may have been many more victims. Some think the real number could be far higher. The exact number will probably never be known. Each missing woman was a daughter, a sister, a friend, a person with dreams that were suddenly cut off. This story is not only about what Ted Bundy did. It is also about how he hid in plain sight, how he fooled people, how he escaped the law more than once, and how his life finally ended in the electric chair. It is a story designed to pull you step by step into the darkness he created, so you feel the weight of each life he destroyed and stay with the story until the very last line. Ted Bundy was born Theodore Robert Cowell on November 24th, 1946, in Burlington, Vermont. His childhood carried a secret. For a time, he believed his grandparents were his parents and that his mother was his older sister. This lie about his own family may have shaped the way he saw himself and others, twisting his sense of truth and belonging. Later, he moved with his mother to Washington State. From the outside, his life began to look stable and successful. He studied at the University of Washington, focused on psychology, and appeared to be serious about his future. He joined political campaigns, shaking hands and smiling for community events. He worked at a crisis hotline, speaking kindly to people who called in distress. To many, he seemed like a caring young man who wanted to help others. This is one of the most disturbing parts of his story: the contrast between his public face and his private actions. People remembered him walking them to their cars to make them feel safe. They remembered his calm voice and reassuring words. It was almost impossible for them to believe that the same man could be planning and carrying out brutal attacks against women. His victims were usually young women in their teens and 20s. Many were in college, busy with classes, part-time jobs, and social lives. They lived in dorms or apartments, sometimes near forests, lakes, or quiet roads. They lived in a world where they believed that if they were careful, they could stay safe. They walked with friends, avoided dark alleys, and trusted that danger would look obvious. Bundy studied them. He watched how they moved when they were alone and what made them lower their guard. He knew how to look harmless. He often pretended to be injured, wearing a sling or using crutches. He might drop something in front of them and ask for help carrying it. Sometimes he posed as an authority figure, like a police officer or security worker, making his victims feel they had to listen to him. His car became part of his hunting method. He drove a tan Volkswagen Beetle, a small, ordinary, friendly-looking car. It did not look frightening, but he had changed on the inside, removing the passenger seat so that a body could be hidden. The same car that might seem safe to a young woman from across a parking lot became a trap the moment she stepped inside. Families waited for loved ones who did not come home. Parents called friends, roommates, and campus security. Flyers appeared on walls and boards with smiling pictures of missing women. Investigators tried to connect cases. But at first, they did not know that one man was behind so many disappearances. Those early mistakes and delays gave him time to keep moving and keep killing. In 1974, the pattern of Ted Bundy's crimes became harder to ignore. In Washington, young women began to vanish with frightening regularity. Many of them disappeared from places that felt safe and familiar, like university campuses and nearby areas. Witnesses sometimes recalled seeing them speaking to a man with his arm in a sling, or a man who introduced himself as Ted. Fear spread quickly. Women started cutting their hair shorter, changing their appearance in the hope that they would no longer match the type of victim he seemed to choose. They walked in groups, avoided going out alone at night, and looked over their shoulders more often. Yet even with all this caution, no one knew exactly who Ted was or where he would strike next. The disappearances did not stay in one state. Similar cases began to appear in Utah, Colorado, and Oregon. A young woman would vanish from a mall parking lot. Another would disappear after leaving a lecture hall. Police in different states were investigating their own lists of missing women, not yet fully aware that the same man might be responsible across state lines. In 1975, Ted Bundy was finally arrested in Utah after a late-night traffic stop. Inside his car, police found items that did not match his smooth, friendly image, objects like handcuffs and tools that could be used for restraint and attack. These discoveries led to further investigation. Soon, he was connected to the attempted kidnapping of a woman who had survived, and he was convicted for that crime. However, even inside the legal system, he found ways to slip away. In Colorado, while facing more charges, he managed to escape custody twice. In one escape, he lost weight so he could crawl through a small hole in the ceiling of his cell. In another, he walked out of a jail library where officials had allowed him to move without shackles because he was acting as his own lawyer. His second escape, in late 1977, led to the deadliest part of his journey. He traveled to Florida and took on new identities, trying to disappear into life in Tallahassee. Instead of stopping, he escalated. In January 1978, he entered the Chi Omega sorority house at Florida State University in the middle of the night. While students slept, he attacked 4 women in their rooms. 2 of them, Lisa Levy and Margaret Bowman, were killed. 2 others survived severe injuries but would carry the trauma and scars for life. That same night, he attacked another woman in her nearby home, adding another victim to the horror of those early morning hours. Less than a month later, he abducted 12-year-old Kimberly Leach from her school in Lake City, Florida. She was just a child with her whole life ahead of her. Her body was later found in a rural area. This crime, against someone so young, added a deeper layer of sadness and anger to a case already filled with pain. In February 1978, Bundy was stopped again by police, this time in Pensacola, Florida. The car he was driving was stolen. His story did not add up. Officers took him in, and soon his true identity was discovered. This time, the law would not let go. The terror that had followed him from state to state was finally cornered in a small police station in Florida. When Ted Bundy went on trial in Florida, he was no longer just a name in police files. He was a national figure. Television cameras were allowed into the courtroom, turning his murder trials into a kind of grim public show. People across America watched as the man accused of some of the worst crimes of the decade stood before a judge and jury. Bundy chose to represent himself in court. He questioned witnesses, argued legal points, and tried to control the story. At times, he smiled for the cameras, as if he were enjoying the attention. To some viewers, he seemed strangely confident and clever. To others, his performance only made him more disturbing because it showed how comfortable he was playing roles. But courtroom charm could not erase the evidence. In the Chi Omega case, investigators brought forward bite mark evidence, hair, fibers, and witness accounts that linked him strongly to the attacks. The scene of the crime, the survivors, and the forensic work all led back to Ted Bundy. In 1979, he was found guilty of the murders of Lisa Levy and Margaret Bowman, along with the assaults on the surviving women. He was sentenced to death. In 1980, another trial followed for the kidnapping and murder of 12-year-old Kimberly Leach. Again, the evidence pointed directly at him. Again, he was found guilty. He received another death sentence. With 3 death sentences behind him, his past seemed fixed, but Bundy continued to file appeals, arguing that his rights had been violated and that the process was unfair. Throughout the 1980s, he stayed on death row in Florida State Prison, while lawyers worked on appeals and the public continued to follow his story. During this time, journalists, authors, and even psychologists visited him, hoping to understand how his mind worked. He gave interviews, sometimes speaking calmly about himself while avoiding full responsibility for his actions. As his final execution date drew near, his strategy shifted. He began to confess to more murders, offering details in exchange for more time and attention. He admitted to killing around 30 women, but it was clear he was still holding back information. Some families heard hints that their missing daughters might have been among his victims, but many never received clear answers. In this last stage, he seemed to use the truth like a bargaining chip, giving small pieces while keeping others hidden. Outside the prison, arguments about his fate grew louder. Some believed that the death penalty was the only way to respond to his long trail of violence. They saw the execution as justice for the women whose lives were stolen. Others opposed capital punishment in any form, saying that even a man like Ted Bundy should not be put to death by the state. The closer the date came, the more intense the debate became. On January 24, 1989, Ted Bundy's time on death row came to an end. Early that morning, he was led from his cell to the execution chamber at Florida State Prison. The man who had once smiled and played with cameras in a courtroom now appeared thinner, older, and quieter. He was strapped into the electric chair, a heavy wooden seat with straps across the body, and a device fixed to his head. Witnesses watched from behind glass as the preparations were made. At 7:16 a.m., the switch was thrown, sending powerful electric current through his body. After a short period, he was declared dead. Ted Bundy was 42 years old when his life ended in that room. Outside the prison, the crowd responded at once. Some people cheered loudly. Some clapped. Some set off fireworks or held banners, shouting that justice had finally been done. For them, this execution felt like a long-delayed answer to the pain felt by so many families. It was a moment they believed the system had finally caught up with the man who had escaped and lied for years. But even after his death, questions remained. Bundy never revealed the full number of his victims. New pieces of evidence, including modern DNA testing, have continued to connect him to earlier cases. Some families still do not know whether their missing daughters, sisters, or friends were among his victims. That uncertainty is part of the lasting cruelty of his crimes. Ted Bundy's case changed how police and courts work. It encouraged better communication between states, stronger forensic methods, and a deeper understanding of how dangerous a person can be even when they look normal, educated, and charming. His story is now used in training, in studies of criminal behavior, and in true crime discussions around the world. Yet no matter how many times it is told, it remains deeply unsettling. In the end, this story is not only about Ted Bundy. It is about the women whose lives were stolen, the families who never fully healed, and the fear that spread across campuses and communities. It is also about a punishment that some people cheer and others question. His execution closed one chapter, but the argument over justice, mercy, and the death penalty continues. What do you think, justice served or not? Thank you for watching Execution File. Please subscribe to support the channel, like, share, comment your thoughts and your location, and stay tuned for more real execution stories told with respect and clarity.